All right, so I have a high point question. What is the most mundane creature that I have that has the ability to reach godhood?
Like, could a rabbit get enough?
So,
you know,
it's a complicated
sentience.
It's a complicated answer because it depends. But the easy answer is probably mortals. Like the easy answer would be the most mundane thing in all of High Point's existence that can become a god as a mortal. I mean, from one perspective, mortals are some of the most mundane things. They have all of the base stats needed. They have intelligence, they have a life force, and they have the ability to level up. That's pretty much the three primary things that are needed in High Point to become a god. There's other things, but if you really want to break down mechanically, intelligence, essence, and the ability to receive XP. If you have those three things, you can become a god in High Point.
Is there something specific in High Point that gives you the ability to receive XP? Because like if I were to cast animate object or like polymorph on an object and turn it into a creature, like could that then?
So gaining XP has certain limitations. Typically you need an essence in order to receive XP, with some caveats. There can be XP vessels that can hold XP, but you cannot put XP in a vessel and that vessel use that XP. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but can the vessel itself earn it, or does the creature have to earn it and put it in the vessel?
Well, and that's where the difference is, right? You can create a vessel that holds XP for various reasons. That's what gods basically do. Gods can create vessels that hold amounts of their XP. XP can be stored in something, but that's not the same as something being able to accept XP. Typically something needs an essence, right? Like you can't just pick up a mundane dagger and just start pumping XP into it. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't do anything.
Right.
It needs some sort of spark of essence, which is typically why it needs to be magical to some nature in order to do that. Now, of course, there's exceptions to everything. Things can get essences. Essence doesn't necessarily mean a spirit. Essence doesn't mean entity. It doesn't mean that there's an intelligence or a will behind it. An essence is essentially the spark, what you would call like the first spark of a spirit or the potential of a soul.
Okay.
It's the starting foundation of what it could become itself. So like all magical items have essence. Their very nature gives them essence, which is why you can put XP into magical items.
Okay.
Put enough XP into essence and that essence gains intelligence. And now all of a sudden you have all three measures to become a god. Because if you have someone with essence and you put enough XP into it, it can gain intelligence. Technically, once you have all three of those, you can seek god. Now there are other caveats of what, like an intelligent sword has a much harder time becoming a god than a human, like an actual mortal.
Yeah.
But they both have the minimum components. So is it possible to say a rabbit or a dog or an other mindless animal could become a god? Theoretically, yes, they all have essence. So therefore, if given enough intelligence,
they have the potential.
They would have that potential. But if if a god creates a vessel that holds XP for, a secondary use that he's going to, use up, kind of like an artificer, storing up magical energy for a device, that vessel will never do anything. It'll just sit there and basically be a tank of water. It'll just fill up and it won't do anything with it.
Is that no matter how much XP he puts into it?
Yes, because there's no essence, there's nothing to convert that XP, right? Imagine essence, like a vessel is like a container of water. Having essence is almost like the container is part of an engine. Has potential to use it, but doesn't necessarily have to be using it. But there has to be, the essence is what can use the XP, right? The essence is what basically makes it available for the XP to be utilized.
Is there something different that a god would do to it than a mortal would do to an item? Because like you're saying, when a mortal like any magical item has some sort of essence and has the potential to gain a consciousness, but a god could create an item that can hold XP that doesn't have an essence.
Correct. So can a human. I mean, technically there are, ways to do it, but yeah, like a vessel can just literally be that. A vessel is just a cup. It's a cup for XP. The difference is essence is someone that can drink it, that can actually drink the water. It doesn't have to be, you can put a bug in water and it will drink the water. That's essence, right?
So
it's utilizing it in some fashion.
Putting XP into a cup is different than pouring XP into an item.
Yes.
Interesting.
The item is not the cup. The item is consuming the XP. The XP can't be retrieved. If I put XP into my magical dagger, that XP is gone. That magical dagger consumed it, just like you consume it when you level up. But if I put it into a container, that XP is a source of something. It's a source of, what do you want to call it, magic, or a source of energy, a source of power.
But you can theoretically lose XP. So it's not gone. It's just used.
It's used.
It just becomes like a part of the thing.
If you give it to your dagger, you do not have the authority or power to take it back. It's in the dagger. A god can, rip it out of it, but you don't have control over it once it's gone.
Is that about the extent? Is there no mortal way to drain XP from an item?
It's not allowed.
So
mortals aren't allowed.
Good to know.
So again, it depends. Technically, by the bare minimum standard, mortals are the average mundane thing that can make godhood, because anything else that's higher than that has a leg up, right? Whether it's a mantle, whether it's a god created another entity. Like there's a lot of different things that are a step above mortals.
Yeah.
But anything be lesser than a mortal technically could be given, like not everything. You can't just pick up a stick and do enough to it to make it available. But a rat has the very minimal essences of what it would take. Now, could a rat do it? Theoretically, yes. Now,
would they need outside help in order to do that?
Absolutely, because like physically speaking, the rat feel like the reason why I have limitations on how much you can level up in a single go is the same reason why it would be almost impossible to get a rat to that stage. That rat would have to be able to endure absorbing the XP, endure the changes. I mean, think about it. You have a rat that has the size of its brain and it works a certain way. And now you want to give that brain intelligence. You want to give a rat brain our level of intelligence. I'm not saying that like the brain will explode, but imagine the idea that you're trying to shove a current day's computer program onto like Windows 98.
Right.
That's what you're doing. You're basically telling something that's not compatible, here's an upgrade that doesn't make sense to you. It just doesn't understand. So the idea of, could you convert it? Could you take meticulous amount of time to perfectly work it? Yes, it would eventually upgrade. But to do that upgrade, you'd almost need to replace damn near every part of a Windows 95 machine, to the point where it's almost not the original, right?
Like, why are you even doing it now?
So is it theoretically possible? Yes, but it's just not the route you would go, because in order to achieve it, it would take astronomical events that are beyond your control. So I could say anything can become a god in High Point, but let's face it, mortals are the lowest mundane thing that have the chance by themselves, because anything else needs outside, like any magical item could become it, but that needs outside help. Unless a magical item started with intelligence, it won't ever seek godhood.
And I wouldn't necessarily classify a magical item as mundane either.
Exactly. Yeah. So hopefully,
and theoretically, mortals are mundane until they're not.
Exactly. Mortals are very well. I also say mundane because they're also, in the context of High Point, they are also the most prevalent. And I say mortals as in any intelligent creature, not just humans or humanoids. They are the most abundant living thing, especially from anything with power. Mortals are just the byproduct of things. The fact that we have things means mortals will exist. You know what I mean? Like for them, it's just like, because we exist, we're gonna have dust, because dust is the accumulation of what we, what comes off of us, right?
Yeah.
It's that kind of concept. To them, it's like, yeah, mortals are there because, well, we have planets and all the other stuff that I do. Like mortals are just a byproduct. So that's kind of why I say that's justifiably why I consider them the most mundane thing, because anything else, and I don't necessarily qualify that as something becoming a god, more something was
turned into
a god.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Can't choose it for itself. The magical barbarian club became a god. That would be a great opportunity for the barbarian to be like, do you want to meet my god?
That makes me curious. Theoretically, it's a mundane club, but does something happen at a certain point when a certain amount of energy or effort towards it? Would something happen to the club, or would there be some club mantle created out somewhere?
It depends. It depends on what's happening. But yes, I mean, you're basically describing the exact process that gods come about. Like the only reason why you stay a god is people have to believe in you, and they have to, want to tithe to you and give you stuff. And therefore all of that converts into power and energy. And that's how you stay alive. So that's technically part of the process of becoming a god. Is it's not just about power. It's also about a siphon. Like gods aren't just a giant lump of power. The difference between an immortal and a god, there's a whole pantheon of these non-mortals that are extremely powerful, but they're not gods, right? And I like having that transition phase, because it's not just going mortal to god. There's going from mortal to immortal to a powerful immortal entity, and then there's becoming a god. And the biggest difference between all of those is everything below a god is a pool of power. They are a vessel. that has a shit ton of power, right? Mortals have none, but they're a potential vessel. Immortals and higher are vessels with a shit ton of power, but that's all they are. They are containers. They hold that power, and as they use it, it goes away.
No, it's not to say that you have to take that intermediary step. You could theoretically go from
yes.
mortal straight to God.
It's harder, but yes.
Sure.
But the intermediary step is there for a couple reasons. One, to train and learn how the powers are used and learn your place in the world and find, what your sphere of influence is going to be. But it's also there because you need a following, you need a siphon, you need a flow of energy to technically be a god. You can't just be a god because you're that powerful. If you have no flow, if you have not one follower, you technically can't be a god. You have to have some sort of energy flow, because that's what kind of basically connects you through all of the different layers. And it's what literally allows you to continue to pump up yourself, right? Because imagine a pool that never has water go in. It will eventually evaporate out. And that's exactly it. Is they have a lot, they can survive without followers, but not forever. They cannot sustain indefinitely. Now, immortals can, but immortals don't use their power like gods do.
They're not consuming their power.
Exactly, because there's a big difference where immortals and lesser gods can use their power, and if they use it in the wrong ways, they can use it up. Like they can actually lose their power by using it. Gods can do this. Gods can do things so powerful that it actually drains them and they have to wait for it to recoup. But that's the difference. If an immortal or a lesser god drains their max cap, there is no recouping that max cap.
So
Gods
it's interesting.
Always have a replenishment because they have that flow.
What differentiates replenishing power between non-replenishing power? Because you got to think that they didn't have that power at some point when they were mortal, or when they had to get it somehow. So if it goes away to the point where you could never get it again.
So it's kind of like HP. Think of it like HP. You have max HP, and then you can lose HP, but you'll get it back. So that's kind of what gods are. You have a pool of power. You can use up to a certain amount of replenishable amount, right? These are things like defending yourself, turning into an avatar, casting magic against other gods, creating a palace for yourself, traveling around the mortal world. These are very uncostly but costly things. They cost you a small amount, but you'll recoup that. It's your natural state of being. That's just you are a powerful entity. You get to use magic. But there are some things that you can't do without burning real power. Like, let's say you wanted to create, let's say you were a lesser god, you're walking around the mortal plane, you're popping in and out, blah, blah, blah. You can go to the other worlds and then you can come to the mortal plane, right? It's costing you, pennies, and you'll get that back, no problem. You'll sleep that off. But let's say you're coming here and some people are like, you're kind of cool. Like, I would believe in you if suddenly I woke up and there was a palace and like a temple of you, I definitely believe in you. You could technically and theoretically do that. But if you do that, you're going to basically burn real power to create a permanent structure in the real world. Mundane little items are one thing. But if you were to, let's say, establish yourself, create a temple that will stand in your name, basically consecrate the ground and be a place for new followers, that's real power. That's power you don't get to recoup. So you put that power out there in hopes that it would get you followers.
In hopes that it'll eventually come back to you in some way, shape, or form.
But if you do that too much, that makes you weaker. And if you're not getting any followers for it, or if you're not getting any favors for it from other gods, like if you're not doing it for some reason, you're just becoming weaker and pissing everybody else off. So that's why that hierarchy of gods is also very tightly, I forget what the word I'm looking for is, but they self-police.
Yeah.
Because of that mindset of, if
we need to maintain our order or else shit's gonna go awry.
Plus, if you're dumb and you lose your power, someone's gonna be willing to snipe you. Like, if you do some dumb stuff and blow through some of your power, there will be someone ready to siphon whatever power is left that you have and take your spot. Because that's the whole thing, right? Is without followers, the only way to get power is to take it from other people. So if you want to become a greater lesser god, the only real way is to take another lesser god's power.
Could a god become weak enough that an immortal could take the leftovers of their power?
Take is harder because you'd have to understand how that process works, and like I said, mortals aren't allowed to understand
immortal.
that.
An immortal. A non-god, but an immortal.
Like an immortal taking a lesser god's power?
Yes.
There are ways. They don't have it intrinsically. That's the kind of power siphon that immortals don't have, but they could. Theoretically, they could learn how to do it.
Interesting.
That
could theoretically be a way that they get a portion of their lost power back.
Yeah, they would be able to utilize that. But an immortal, that could also ascend them. If an immortal did that to a lesser god, it could give them enough to become a lesser god.
Weird question. What if they didn't want to? Would it be like, because you did this, like you're literally taking their place, like
So
kind of
that's,
regardless?
That's where the entire intermediary thing, like a lesser god is just a more powerful immortal entity. So it's more like if you didn't want to be that powerful, you could just blow off the energy. You could just waste it and demote yourself to an immortal again, or you just low key it. There are plenty of immortals who
are theoretically gods, but are just immortals.
Yeah, there are plenty of immortals who just low key it, but when it's that whole someone tests them, it's that whole let me take off my weighted bands real quick, and then it's oh never mind, I don't want to no. But the idea is like there is a level cap, a lesser god. There are in that intermediary step you can only get so powerful before the lack of flow will stop you. So there is no lesser god or immortal that could challenge a god power to power. Now you could be clever and have favors and stuff, but
sure.
Like power to power, there's no way that you could amass that much power, because the only way that they can hold that kind of power is through the flow. Because it's kind of like a pool. You fill a pool up, it'll overflow. But if you have a pump system running through, some of that gets siphoned through the pipes, some of it's in the giant pump, some of it's over in that water heater, some of it's in the filtration system. The more powerful of a god you are, the more complicated your pool system is. So the water you see is not necessarily the water that's at hand. And then, of course, you can have a reservoir. The most powerful gods, they have a backup pool and a backup reservoir that if these pools empty, they'll just fill them right back. Like there's those layers. That's why you have vessels. That's why some gods have vessels. Some gods hold all their power with them. Some have it like in little areas. Some have it siphoning for different projects. It's one of those things where the higher the level of the god, the more complex you have to manage your flow, because it's kind of like money or assets, right? You want to make sure that it's not all in one spot, and you want to make sure that it's working for you.
Interesting.